Starting off the second turn on Britannia, I've already positioned my Romans. At one point or another, I noticed I left some Romans here on the Briganti card. That's often the case for me. I forget to score things. It'll happen. But here's the deal. With the... well, first of all, I tend to speed up my play and do less and less video as I go. I think I went into a lot of detail on that first turn. There's been a couple of games where I haven't been able to do that. Europa Universalis, for the large part, never really sped up completely. And in Abyss, I just was so excited with every card draw, which is not the best way to play or video it. And I apologize for those of you who watched that. But with this one, I did want to focus in a little bit on the Roman actions because they had some hard choices. Most of the game is not filled with many hard choices. And basically, I want to push up into my big, rich areas in the north. That's been my goal all along. Alban, Dalridia, Dunedin. Well, I walked through these, so I get forts there. I'm going with 3 guys up into Dalridia, and that gets me so that I'm close to taking Dunedin. I also position myself to attack Strathclyde. That's the most important Briganti space. If I take that, if I even just attack that, they may submit, but I doubt it. There's not a lot for them to gain by giving in to me at this point. Remember some interesting video on the Roman conquest. I don't remember which one it is. And I've also taken a push against both the Welsh here, because there's some open area there that I could grab cheaply, and against the Belgae because I've got Norfolk I want to get. What have I not done? Well, I'm not trying to wipe them out. They're not that valuable. I've seen them survive, I've seen them not. Most games I wipe them out, but this game, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm pushing harder for that northern points. I want to get every northern point that I can and see how well I can do with the Romans for that. Anyway, I'll fight these out and we'll go on from there. And I want to center in on the choices that retreaters made. So, for example, the Welsh pulled back. They pulled back into an open area to get better production, as did the Belgae, although they pulled back into Lindsey because there's forts open. Hey, points! They love forts. Forts are easy to fight. They've got troops here to fight a Fort 2, and they also have a lot of these. This is important because the Roman limes points come only if the Romans have forts or submitted nations in those areas. So, if they start losing as they are by not having a garrison here, by not wiping out the southern forces, they're going to get less points on turn 5. This is painful. Things like Cheshire, Essex, York, but also these areas are worth a decent amount. It's the northern areas that aren't worth so much for limes points. So, not taking the balanced approach I usually do is probably going to mean the Romans get less victory points total. I'm very worried about that. I don't think I've ever tried this. I've always gone for wiping out the forces that were in these heartlands, and I'm seeing why you want to do that. The Picts fought 1 round, killed, and then withdrew. They fought actually several rounds before they withdrew. The Brigantes did not submit, but they pulled back to Galloway. They can get some points. They can still produce. The Romans kind of want to make the Welsh and or Brigantes, and whoever they can, the Picts if they can, all submit, because then they don't have to expend as much force. But sometimes it costs you more force to make someone submit than anything else. All right, well, now we're going on to the Belgae, and they're going to do some raiding, and I'll probably come back after everybody's gone just to see how many points people scored. Well, that's the end of turn 2. Point-wise, I forgot to do the Brigantes. That's what's wrong. All right, let me fix them first. Looks like I forgot the Welsh too, which... not too big a deal that I did things kind of out of order. I jumped over both the Brigantes and Welsh to get to the Picts and Caledonians. I don't remember why. Anyway, point-wise, we've got some interesting stuff going on. You can see the Picts have cut down, pushing down defending their 2 mountain areas. Well, the Caledonians then came down and grabbed the empty space, and that often happens. This is how the Caledonians get extra spaces. It's tough for them to actually attack the Picts. Over here, the Belgae are just running rampant. They've destroyed a number of forts, and we got the Welsh coming out and hitting the southern areas where they're not terribly threatened. They gave Diffid up. The Romans will take that. That's a free half point. But then what do the Romans want to do? They can go 1-2. These things end your movement when you cross them. Kind of like Highlands would. But it's going to be tough. Point-wise, Blues scored a lot of points, keeping the Belgae alive like that. They're at 16 points. That's pretty good at this point in the game. Reds got 7 points, having sacked Cheshire. They also went into the Pennons, but got driven out of there. They didn't want to risk losing a production space, as it were, along with 2 pieces. And making an attack, so they sent 2 guys in. One got killed on a 5. Well, they pulled the other one out because then they're fighting at bad odds. They've got to roll a 6. The opponent has to roll a 5. Usually I like at least 2-1 in the mountains. Romans can go 1-1 and it's even. 2-1 in the mountains, I feel, gives you a slight edge. I think if you do the math, it's correct. And Green's got 4 points. This is not when Green's supposed to be collecting their points. They get their big points with the Danes. Those are the power. I don't want to fish them out, but they're their huge point generator. So the only real huge point generator on the board right now is the Romans. And I'll kind of mention when people get their big point generators. But for red, it's really the Saxons. For blue, the Angles are a decent point generator, and then the Normans are a decent point generator. I don't know if they have one that they absolutely rely on. And for purple, it's the Romans, but they also have the Dubliners, who can bring a ridiculous amount of points for how tiny they are. And likewise, things like the Irish can score decent points, even though they're this minor little force. It's kind of a weird feeling in the game, that's all. Anyway, that is the end of turn 2. On turn 3, we get some new things. We get Irish raiders in the Atlantic, and the Romans are going to get the points for all the areas they've walked through. They walked through a lot, but they didn't defend anything. And now they've got a lot of holes in their later area. Unless they can maybe get the Welsh submitted and occupying this territory, which the Welsh don't terribly want to do, you can bribe them with, I'll let you grow if you occupy this stuff. Or maybe the Brigantes in the southern land, or central area here. The Romans are going to have a hard time here. I got to pop some Irish out, and they go, I don't know, probably out in the Irish Sea or Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean. Now remember, they can raid, which means they can strike. Whoa. Boy, I'm too jittery right now. They get points for destroying Roman forts, for destroying any army while raiding, which is to say they go back to sea. Now, those are pretty easy to do. And then they get points for territory coming up in the near future. So they've got to keep that in mind too. So they may want to set up and start building, or they may want to remain as raiders. I'll set up turn 3 and we'll get started on that. Well, the Romans didn't quite run the table. I've begun the 3rd turn here on the points. You can see where I've got the little white things where there were forts, so they scored points for them. They got all their big ones. They managed to take Devon. They managed to take Galloway. Really, they couldn't push down as far as they'd like to, in some ways. They took Lindsay and Norfolk, filled everything out. That got them to 32.5 points, which is actually a decent amount. Very decent. 27, I think, is what I usually kind of end up with. I target for 30. This is a high amount of points. But I got real problems here. Cheshire, Essex, and York. York's gone. Cheshire's gone. Essex is still there. So that's 6 points I'm going to lose. These guys are 2 each. Whis. Kent. North Mercia. Gone. South Mercia. Gone. Norfolk, Suffolk, and Sussex. 1 gone. They can't hold everything. what they're going to be doing now is kind of garrisoning the most important forts to them, which are not these northern ones anymore. And that's kind of why you don't want to go there, because we're going to lose some points. Now, here's the question. What things do we want submitting? The Brigantes are down to 2 areas. They don't have to submit. They're allowed to. It may be that they won't submit unless I take their last area, or threaten to take their last area. Likewise, and that's usually the case, the Picts have to be down to 2 areas. They're probably not going to submit, and I'm going to have to pull back and give that territory up. That's not a terribly big deal. I don't think there's anything that I consider worthwhile that the Picts can hold. The problem is they can burn things like Lothian that are worth a point to me, and I probably won't be able to defend that, except accidentally trying to make my way back down. Finally, the Welsh, down to 4 areas. Now, they're there, but they don't want to submit unless there's a serious attempt to perform genocide. That's one of the problems with the game. Nobody will submit, usually, unless you really threaten them. Now, there's other options. You could say, hey, look, I'm gonna wipe you out if you don't submit. But they have the option to say, well, let me see it, big boy. They don't have to. There's no reason to trust you on this. I've been able to convince the Welsh to submit when they're not in terribly bad shape a little earlier than you would expect them to. In a sense, they're preserving their own forces, and I'm, as the Romans, would be perfectly willing to give them, growth so that they go take things like Cumbria and Cheshire. Same goes for the Brigantes. The problem is these guys have points they want to get. So the Welsh are worth a few points here. It might be worth trying to save them and build them up for later when they're worth more points and make sure that they survive the game. That's usually a safe thing. The problem is I think green has the advantage. Nobody else thinks this, but I think green is actually, especially amongst a group of newbie players, the strongest of the powers. They kind of just fall into their points. Purple has to work quite hard with the Romans, and among newbie players, they look like they're winning as soon as they score this big 32 points. Everybody's like, oh, even blue, who's doing fantastic. Right now, I'd say blue has the edge in this game by far, but we'll see. Anyway, purple wants to wipe out those Belgae. They could be an annoyance later on. They're not going to score many points for blue, but they can be used to attack and weaken enemies of, say, the Angles and help them. They also help for the election for Bretwald if they survive that long. All right, well, we'll get on to the native powers and come back after they're done, probably. I just finished the Belgae, who made an unsuccessful attack on Hwis and went back to the downlands. The reason I came back, though, is because... oh, they got some points, too. One thing I forgot to mention is that... I was talking and I forgot what I forgot to mention. Right then. I don't remember what it is. I was so excited about it. I remember. So I'm leaving these things on the map because the Romans can only build a fort once in each area. I finished up the Welsh. They went and took Dyfed and Hwis. They want Powys and Welsh territory so much. They get 2 points for Powys, 1 for each Welsh, only a half for outside Wales. Well, this, I believe, may count as Wales. I'm not sure. I may be wrong about that. Anyway, yeah, I don't think they do. I don't think it does, even though they start with it. I'd have to look that up. But this is really not accessible to them right now, so it may not be an issue. I'll have to look that up, though. So now we'll be going with the Brigantes. Yes, those Cornish areas count as Wales, which means they're kind of screwed not having them. Quite often, the Welsh are just in those, score big points. They got kind of pushed out, lost a space they can't regain. This one's fortified, so it was harder to fight. Taking Powys in this was more important. Damn it. My mind keeps fading out on things here. I wonder why. Must be getting old. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to leave too much dead time for you. Well, we've passed through just about everyone else. The Brigantes did quite well, taking the Pennons and March away. Picts slammed into Strathclyde. These aren't necessarily places people want, but getting the extra points is important, and staying near where you want to be. The Brigantes don't have a way to get to Strathclyde easily. If they grow a piece, they could drop 2 in here and overrun up to there, and that would give them a shot. Strathclyde's worth a lot, 3 points to them. Galloway's worth 2, though. I think the Brigantes are in danger of the Romans maybe trying to attempt an extermination campaign against them. It's going to be rough, though. This one is going to be the hard one to get because the reinforcements aren't going to be able to make it there, and everything else is up here in the north. This guy, 1, 2, 3, he can make it. So yeah, they could actually consolidate quite a bit of force against the Brigantes. And the Brigantes are sitting in territory the Romans want more than anything else that they can get by submission. They've got until turn 5. Everybody else scores on turn 4, which is an interesting dynamic. Now, we have the Irish. Irish Raider. Now, the Irish on turn 4 do want some things, and they get 2 points for Avalon, Cheshire, Cornwall, all kind of stuff that they could grab Cheshire. That would probably be somewhat suicidal. They could land in Cornwall and get some points for that. However, they also like destroying things. That's worth a point. Do they want to drop in and maybe raid someone? Well, right now, they view Blue as doing the best in this game. Blue's got 21 current points, which by my knowledge is pretty good. Red's 9 isn't bad either, but well, what if we slithered up here and attacked Strathclyde? We can attack from the Irish Sea. I don't have to look that one up. I know that. They're Irish after all. And that may not be the case. That's kind of like, I'm a druid. Of course I can do that. No. There are other options. Whist looks dangerous. I'm not really interested in landing in Cornwall, primarily because the big advantage of that is getting some population growth to land on the board and stay there. And this is a safer place, but it's not terribly useful. Diffid would be kind of interesting. I think, actually, I am going to make a landing. Green's not doing all that well. They're not doing all that terribly either, though, and they have a tendency to win. Diffid to the Irish is not worth anything. Oh yeah, it is. It's worth 2 points. Yeah, let's drop in on Diffid and see what we can do there. And that's just going to be a one-on-one. I'll use the white die for the Irish. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. They don't want to keep. They don't get to keep it. All right, I'll sail up and attack the picks up here in Strathclyde because I think Blue is doing quite well right now. And I hit them, and I go back out to sea. That's important. If I stay there, I don't get this point, and I get a victory point for killing a pict while raiding. And that was red that gets this. Hey, I am red. I don't want to attack myself. All right. So that's the end of this one, and we'll be going to turn 4. I'll show you what's set up after that. But turn 4 is the first interesting turn. It's the first victory point turn. Not the first interesting turn. The first turn was interesting, wasn't it? I don't know. It's the first victory point turn, and this is the time when everybody's going to try to pad their points, but they don't want to lose things that are important to their future. What's important to the future? Well, the Welsh are, the Picts are, the Caledonians are. The Belgae definitely are not. The Brigantes are iffy. Brigantes don't usually survive the game. Irish can sneak off and survive. They have points that go out fairly far. The Brigantes do as well. They just usually can't manage it. This is what they want to own all game. Anyway, we'll load this one up and keep moving on.